Hello everyone and welcome back to another Kerbal Space Program video. It has been quite some time since I have last recorded a KSP video, and that's sort of my bad, but right around the time that I last uploaded, I got very busy. Suddenly I got a new job. I started, my course load for school increased exponentially, and so I didn't really have the time. So I'm really sorry about that. Really what inspired me to come back and do it was every week or so I'd get like a really positive comment or message just saying, oh, I really love what you're doing. That was really entertaining, or, oh, I liked the video or something like that. And I was like, oh, people appreciate it and I had fun doing it. So I figured I'd give it another go. Today we're going to be going to Pol. Pol is personally one of my favorite places to visit. It's sort of a neglected place in the solar system. It doesn't get a lot of attention, and I think that's kind of disappointing. A lot of people just see it as a brown blob, but I think it's pretty exciting. They have these big yellow spires and stuff, and it's just a pretty interesting place to visit. You can see me sort of building out a rover here. This rover is not actually used. We don't actually end up using it. I ended up flying this mission 3 times. The first time was just sort of a test to make sure everything was working well. And then the second time I corrupted the video. But anyway, on those first 2 times, the rover wasn't really ever working right. I guess because Pol's gravity is so low that it just didn't really work. So I didn't even try to do it on the third one. So this whole rover's sort of pointless. But, I guess it sort of looks cool and we can bring it along, I suppose. So, yeah, it has been quite some time. I think I last uploaded in October, and it is now April. So it's unfortunately been quite a while, and I had fun doing it, but I just did not have the time to do it, and so I couldn't keep up with it. But I'm excited. Each of these videos takes dozens of hours of work, and I just don't have that time realistically over a project to stay dedicated to something when it's incredibly time consuming. So I just didn't have the time, but hopefully now I will get back to producing the Kerbal Space Program content that you guys love and I love to make. So I'm glad to be back. You can see this sort of unconventional lander design where the engine is or there is no one engine on the bottom, but we have 4 sticking out around the top. Sort of a sky crane, except it doesn't attach. And you can see me experimenting with some struts here. Now, they weren't really used during the mission. I mostly just used the landing legs. But I know that the impact tolerances of those strut pieces is very high. And so I figured, oh, if we have a bit of a hard landing, then maybe we can use those to absorb some of the impact. But we didn't end up needing them, but why not? They sort of look cool anyway. So you can see this rocket is very overbuilt. I had thousands and thousands of meters per second of delta V after this. Even if I hadn't used any gravity assists for like joule capture or joule escape or any of that, which I did, I still would have had more than enough delta V to do this. I tend to build my rockets like way more than I need. I like big rockets. Who doesn't like big rockets? And if you make a mistake, it's fine. And because I flew this mission so many times, I flew it pretty good. I did make one mistake, and we'll see that later during my capture burn at Pol. But in terms of, I didn't load any quick saves the entire time I did the mission. So here we go, actually. Here's the rocket. I think it looks pretty cool, and we'll go ahead and launch that thing right about now. The thing is here with the rocket is that I think the more overbuilt you build it, the less I guess sort of skill it takes. I think it takes away something. So fine-tuning your rockets is certainly for some people, but hey, I like a versatile rocket just as much as the next person does. So you can see we're using those F1 engines, or the F1 analog engines. I believe we have 8 of them down there, just to boost us up to a high enough speed. I think I say this in pretty much all of my videos, but 45 degrees by 10 kilometers is good to shoot for, and then you're going to be wanting to fly pretty much horizontal by 30 kilometers. You can see I'm not exactly doing that. For less aerodynamic rockets, you really want to just go straight up, or at least a lot more vertical to cut down on air resistance. Of course, we are pretty aerodynamic, but I wasn't really paying attention, so that's my bad. Alright, and here we go. I already launched on a rough Joule transfer window. You can see I have some mods in the on the right-hand side of the screen. Transfer window with planner is one of them. So I don't remember the exact transfer window for Joule. It'll pop up on the screen now. Alrighty. And so here's the thing is I didn't get it perfect, but if you're anywhere from like 1900 to like 2050, I guess, weird way to say 2050, meters per second of delta V, you're fine. Realistically, if you're, building a rocket like me that's not incredibly, fine-tuned where you have like 0 meters per second left over at the end of the mission, that 100 meters per second or so is sort of just, some leeway room, some rounding errors at that point. So here we go. You can see me plotting my maneuver node for Tylo, even though we're not going to Tylo. Most people use either Tylo or Lathe, but usually Tylo because it's a little bit more massive, to capture Joule, because Joule is, a big place, and depending on where you want to go, it can take varying levels of delta V, but it's always going to be a ton of delta V to capture a Joule, unless you use a gravity assist. Now, I'm not great at explaining gravity assist, but if you're trying to think about how the gravity of the planet is going to affect your orbit. So, for example, if you're passing on the inside of the orbit, obviously that's going to speed you up relative to the planet, and you'll get ejected from the planetary system. Or, like I'm doing, and you pass on the outside, then it'll pull you closer to a closer orbit of that planetary object, and you will be captured in this case, and that's what happened here. I could have fine-tuned it a little bit more just to getting a super low orbit around Joule, but of course I'm not going to Lathe, or I'm not trying to get a low orbit around Joule. I'm just trying to go to Pol, so that's not what we're doing here. And I promise you, I'm not good at Kerbal Space Program, or I'm not a god at Kerbal Space Program, but you will actually see in a moment here when I adjust my anti-normal and normal burns that I actually have a almost perfect encounter right off the gravity assist from Tylo, which I thought was pretty cool. I promise you, I'm not good at predicting that stuff. I was planning on just burning to a similar orbit of Pol like I did on the previous 2 times I flew this mission, but I didn't have to, and I thought that was pretty sweet. Now, it did have some unintended consequences that I wasn't really expecting, but, we live and we learn, I suppose. So here we go. I'm just finally plotting my maneuver node and preparing to capture at Joule. So while we have just the maneuver nodes playing in the background, I'm going to go ahead and say I have some mods. I'm not going to list them all because there's quite a few. None of them affect gameplay or are like part mods or any of that. Like Better Time Warp, totally recommend that. Hyper Edit is just for testing rockets, although I don't use it very much. Transfer Window Planner. And then I have stuff like Eve, Environmental Visual Enhancements. That's for like clouds and visual stuff. Scatter, Parallax, stuff like that. It's just for visual mods. So if you notice that the game's looking pretty great, that is why. And you may notice that compared to my other videos, it looks terrific. And that's because in the 6+ months I've been gone, I got a new computer. And so that has certainly helped quite a bit in terms of the video production and just how everything looks and how easy it is to do the video production and editing and such. So here we are at Pol. I did make a mistake here. The previous 2 times I flew the mission, I burned up to, or I got the Tylo gravity assist up to Pol's level, and then I just burned to a similar orbit to Pol until I got an encounter at Pol. And that means that I had a relatively low speed relative to Pol on my encounter, and so my capture burn was not very big. However, That did not happen this time because I got the encounter right off the Tylo gravity assist, which one might see as lucky, but then I was not expecting, I guess just not predicting, that the capture burn at Pol would be so big, and so I sort of overshot it a little bit and definitely did a pretty inefficient capture burn at Tylo, but it's alright. Everything worked out in the end, and we had plenty of Delta V left over anyway. I didn't even have to inject those side tanks at all at the entire mission, and those easily got me 3,000 plus meters per second of Delta V, and we still had a couple thousand after that, so we had more than enough, really. Way more than enough. So here we are at Pol, and you can see here's the mistake. I was not expecting, I was like, oh no, and here's we're burning, and I'm realizing right about now that I have way overshot this, and now I'm gonna sort of coast towards the edge, leaving Pol's sphere of influence. I don't end up leaving it, but it is certainly not the most efficient method. Oh, that's another mod. You may notice that the engine plume for our nuclear engine there, in a second, I'm in the map view, is looking pretty sweet, and that would be real plume. It is really the only, I guess, non-stock looking thing that I have here. I also usually run restock, but some people don't like restock. I guess they just sort of like the personal touch that the stock parts have, and I like that too, so that's why I'm not running restock right now. But if you guys want me to run restock just to make the parts look a little bit better in future videos, let me know, and I'll totally do it. So here we are circularizing, or at least getting into orbit around Pol, and we'll go ahead and circularize that out, and then we'll go ahead and land. Also, after this video, we've done Val, and we've done Pol, Minmus Mun, Duna, Gilly, and I think that's Drez. We've done Drez, although I don't really... we might have to do Drez again, because Drez is an incredibly boring place to visit, and as much as I liked our little Drez Canyon excursion, that video is one of the worst performing videos on my channel. So obviously you guys didn't like it, so I might have to revisit Drez and see if I can do something a little more interesting. So here we are. We'll go ahead and slow down the video for you guys during our little landing burn. It went pretty well. I did not end up having to use those impact tolerances, and I did a pretty sweet suicide burn. You can go ahead and notice up at the top of the screen, we have Kerbal Engineer Redux. So we have our suicide burn counter. You can customize whatever information you want to see at the top of the screen. But on the right-hand side at the bottom, we have our suicide burn countdown. So I'm just using that to sort of guide myself in and see how long until I eventually touch down. And here we are, and wait for it, and there we go. Terrific. Oh, no, not quite. There we go. And we are on the surface. Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and collapse those landing legs, and then I realized, oh, I'm sort of sliding. Yep, and so I just go ahead and put them back out. You notice that the rocket is clipped into the ground a little bit. I'm not 100% sure what that is, but I think it's a conflict with parallax, which is why the ground is so detailed in the first place. And it sort of just projects a more detailed ground above the stock ground. And so the rocket clips through it a little bit, but that's okay. We're going to name this flag First Pol Landing and fly it around a little bit. The rover did have a scanning arm, but I'm not really sure. Someone let me know what the breaking ground surface features are for Pol, because the big yellow spire thingies, those are not solid, and all the breaking ground surface features are solid. So I'm not really sure what we can actually scan on Pol. Someone's gonna have to let me know, or I'm gonna have to look it up, because I don't know. So just flying around. I did have some surface experiments on the rocket in those little side compartments, but by the time I remembered that I had them, I was like, you know what, let's just go. This is a sandbox mode anyway. Yeah, you can see me looking at it and be like, no, whatever. This is a sandbox playthrough anyway, so it's not super necessary. In fact, this is actually a different save file than the file I've played on for my other ones, because that save file got corrupted, and while I could have gone through the hassle, I was like 2 missions behind what the last backup was. So I decided, you know what, I didn't have really any sentimental attachment to that, so I can go ahead and just restart a new save file. And here we go. We're going to go ahead and burn up. Here's a good docking tip. You want to burn, especially for a place that has relatively no gravity and no atmosphere, you want to burn when it's just barely behind you, almost directly on top of you. And you'll burn up to the same height and same direction, obviously, for the orbit. And you want to get within 10 kilometers or so, and just fine-tune those radial in, radial out, prograde, retrograde, and normal and anti-normal until you get a pretty good encounter. And then when you're actually docking, you want to click on the little the meters per second, above the nav ball to direct to target, and you'll burn retrograde to target, and then towards the target, and then coast a little bit, see how close your encounters are, retrograde to target, and then towards the target, repeat, and it's not the most efficient way, but it works. So here we are. I have exited Pol, and I am trying to get a gravity assist from Tylo to head back to Kerbin. Now, I don't need to do this. As I said, I have more than enough Delta V, but I figure, it's fun. I like plotting gravity assists, so why not? We're trying to get a retrograde relative to Joule gravity assist, and it's kind of hard just based on where we're orbiting and predicting, how is Tylo's gravity going to affect me? So I just play around with the maneuver nodes, and that's really what you want to do just to learn how to do it. Just play around with maneuver nodes. Joule is a great place to learn how to do gravity assists because there are so many celestial bodies there, and you're not gonna use a ton of Delta V navigating the Julian system. So you can sort of planet hop. I might do a Joule Grand Tour or a Joule 5 mission one of these days just to have fun. That might be a cool video idea. So let me know if you guys want to see that. Although I think the next place we're going to visit is going to be Elu or Lathe. Lathe is personally my favorite place in the entire solar system to visit. Just because it's breathable atmosphere, the ability to take off your helmet, planes work there, jet engines work there, so it's a lot like Kerbin, and I like putting planes on there. Even planes that necessarily couldn't even get to orbit, just to fly around, and maybe just have a fuel outpost there. I always find that fun. So you can see I'm retrograde relative to Joule, and this Tylo gravity assist, Tylo is not powerful enough. It is not massive enough to get me all the way back to Kerbin, but it'll get me a good chunk of the way there, and we'll just burn the rest. I was a little surprised at how expensive the burn was to get down to Kerbin, but it's no big deal, and we'll just play around with those maneuver nodes, radial in, prograde, radial out, and then we have an encounter. Now, heat shields in this game are crazy overpowered, so I basically was just aiming for about 35,000 meters to above the surface so that I wouldn't burn up, but even traveling at the 4,500 meters per second that I was, when I entered Kerbin's atmosphere, there was very little risk of burning up. I did not have temperature gauges on, but I'm sure it would have been fine. Heat shields in this game, even with limited ablator, I could have cut the ablator in third, and I would have been fine for this mission. So you'll see I have a decent encounter, but I do something that's not necessary, and I would not have done this if it wasn't a video. And that is, you can see I'm on the dark side, and I sort of wasn't thinking until I actually encountered Kerbin. So here's the maneuver node. We'll go ahead and burn there just to correct our orbit a little bit and get on track to intercept Kerbin. So I do something here, or in a little bit, that was not necessary, but I did it anyway, and I guess it increased the viewing pleasure, and that would be I burned to the daylight side to get to Kerbin. Of course, I could have just entered on the dark side, and it would have been fine, but then you can't see anything, and what's the fun in that? So, just burning our maneuver node. Remember to start burning your maneuver nodes, and this isn't a guide, but remember to start burning your maneuver nodes halfway before you get to them, and then half after, because the game calculates that your maneuver, that you're executing all of your delta V at the maneuver node. But of course, you can't do that, right? It takes time to burn your engines. So you just have to split it half before and half after to make it work. And that's how we do it. Unless you have the advanced maneuver node turned on, which of course you could turn on, but I do not have that turned on. So you can see I should have just there set my the side that I was entering to the opposite side so that I'd be entering on the light side when I got there, but I did not, and unfortunately that will come back to haunt me, and I'll be spending a lot of delta V correcting for it. So you can see right about here I realize I'm entering on the dark side and I'm gonna have to switch around. Not a big deal. We have more than enough delta V to do it. We haven't even expended those side tanks yet. In fact, I might even be able to, just for the sake of time, to get another video out at some point sooner than I otherwise would be, might use the same rocket that we used here to go to Elu, because this rocket is certainly more than capable of doing Elu with probably no modifications. I think the only modification that I would probably do is swap out those solar panels that I have on the rocket for RTGs, just because even though the difference between Joule and Elu in terms of solar panel efficiency isn't that big, I still would rather use RTGs all the way out there. And it wouldn't be super necessary considering the nuclear engine has an alternator in it, so it produces electrical power on its own. And there we go, finally ditching those side boosters and ditching that core booster to go ahead and re-enter. And something cool happened while I was re-entering. It took a lot longer than I was expected to slow down, and I think part of that is that the capsule had a bit of a aerodynamic force on it, where it was sort of creating a lift, like a, I don't know what the term for it is, just, I don't know, someone asked Scott Manley, but it sort of had a body lift to it, which I thought was pretty neat, because you can see me sort of looking at the map view, and it taking a lot longer than I thought it would to slow down. So here we go, deploying our drag chutes, and deploying our main chutes in a sec. And we have returned to Kerbin. So, yeah, just let me know where I should go next, and I hope you guys enjoyed the video. So, yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and come back and watch more. Thanks, guys.